With strict restrictions on the movement, traveling seems to be a distant dream. But with domestic flights resuming, there seems to be some hope. Hi everyone, I'm Kamya from Curly Tales, and on our special show City Cares, we speak to business owners and operators from the food and travel industry to get in a perspective from them. Joining me today on the show is Vinod Kannan from Vistara to talk about the new normal for airlines. Mr. Kannan, thank you for joining in. Good to see you. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, Kamya. It's well, at least we're back in the skies, so it's positive, it's good news, and of course, there's some relaxation of the lockdown as well. So all welcome news, I would say.
Right, and in fact, after 2 months of lockdown, flights have finally started flying from May 25th. How has the demand been so far? Because of the pent-up demand, are we seeing flights running in full capacity?
So there are two parts to this. So firstly, of course, even when we resume flights, there was a directive that we can only operate a certain capacity. So we could only operate about a third of flights, which we had planned, which we usually operate. Plus, there were further restrictions because some airports or some states wanted to curtail it further based on the number of cases they have, based on their conditions and so on. So if you look at it objectively, I think we are operating about 20 to 25% of what we would normally operate. Capacity-wise, that's in terms of number of seats or number of flights. Demand has been there, but what is very, I would say some findings or observations. It's a lot of it is directional. So you'd find a lot of people, for example, leaving Mumbai to go to other parts of India. But there's very few people going into Mumbai because, as you might know, there are various rules regarding quarantines and institutional quarantines and so on. Similarly, for Bengaluru, we find a lot of travel out rather than in. So it's been directional. It's been on certain sectors. We've been able to command very high load factors. In fact, on the Delhi to Kolkata route, we upgauged our flights to the 787, which is the biggest aircraft we have and the only 787-9 in the country. So it's been heartening in those regards. But of course, overall, if you look at it industry-wise, I think we're doing still 50 to 60% load factors.
Okay. Now, like you mentioned, flights have been given permission to run in full capacity at this point of time, and middle seat may not necessarily be left empty. What are your thoughts on that?
This is an issue which has been debated ad nauseum, I guess. There's different schools of thought. I think, to be fair, it does provide, at least optically, blocking the middle seat is something that provides some visual, relief to customers and assurances. But let me also state very clearly that if you look at the way airlines operate, and especially Vistara, there's a lot of safeguards and measures in place even before the passenger even comes to the airport and boards the aircraft. So let me give you an example. We give out a safety kit to each and every passenger. With a mask, with a face shield, with sanitizers, and everyone is mandated to wear a mask on the flight. We are not serving any food, although we'd love to. I mean, we are known for our food and beverage, but we've taken the decision in accordance with the guidelines that there'll be no meals because there's a higher chance of contamination. So there's a lot of measures, and all airlines have put in place to prevent the spread. Yes, the risk is not going to be zero, but with a lot of these measures, I think the requirement of blocking the middle seat probably goes away from an actual results perspective.
Right. Mr. Kannan, generating demand in the coming months is going to be quite a bit of a challenge. Are there any initiatives that you are planning to take in terms of marketing or putting the message across about the safety measures that you just mentioned?
You might see Kamya on our website. We've just launched a campaign which says, "Let's make flying feel safe again," because that's exactly what it is. What we've outlined is what we as an airline are doing, right from enabling web check-in, making sure there's contactless, there's as minimal human interaction as possible, making sure that the aircraft are disinfected and sanitized, as well as cleaning all contact surfaces. So these are all things that we're doing. Not to mention all the PPEs that we're providing to our crew. So our crew who dons the aubergine colors and the uniform of Vistara, and proudly do so, now are doing that, but also have a protective lab gown or a suit above that. So they have gloves, and so they're trained as well on what needs to be done. So that's what we are doing. And we are also asking the customers to do their part because it takes two to tango. So we need customers to make sure that they only report to the airport if they are fit, If they are not from a containment zone, for example, make sure that they have all their self declarations in place before they board the aircraft, and of course sanitize their hands and not move around. So these are all measures that we request customers to also put in, and thankfully for the last week at least we've seen that all of them have been followed very well.
Okay, while we are taking safety measures against COVID, what happens to the regular safety measures in the airline, be it the oxygen mask and all of that? Is the gear going to be a hindrance in terms of the regular airline safety measures?
I don't think so. So safety, in fact, aviation is the most, I would say, one of the most regulated and safety conscious industry. So that's not, that there's no change to that and there's no compromise to that. In fact, coming up with the procedures, to be fair to the ministry as well as the DGCA, they have been involving airlines and to make sure that safety is not compromised. So all the measures which are in place, you would see that they are an addition, as an additional layer of protection over the basic safety norms that we already have.
Right. Now, it is said that the airport authority is going to do medical checkups. Is the airline also additionally doing anything in terms of thermal screening or any other tests to be done while boarding?
When the passenger enters the airport terminal building, I'm sure you're aware that there's a temperature screening, there's a temperature check, which takes place at all airports. In addition, before the passenger boards the aircraft, we are also doing a secondary temperature check to make sure that no symptomatic passengers are boarding. So that's something that we have done in addition to what has been mandated by the authorities.
All right. Let's talk about the financials now, and we know how big the aviation industry is and how much it contributes to the overall GDP of India. But ITA recently said that the aviation industry is under tremendous stress with loss of over $11 billion rather, and also 47% of air traffic reduction in that case, and a job loss of as much as 3 million. Correct me if I'm wrong in terms of these numbers. So has there been any economic relief that has been announced by the government, be it the taxes or the fuel surcharge?
So there's two parts to this. The first part in terms of what the government has come up with in terms of package. And when the finance minister came up with the overall package, there were some items which are relevant to aviation. For example, reducing the flight time between points and so on. But I believe there are more, there's more that can be done. And all airlines, including various aviation bodies, we have been in constant touch with the ministry to see whether there's more measures that can be put in place. I mean, it could be credit facilities, it could be introduction of a GST on ATF, which is the aviation turbine fuel. So there are a few measures that could add to the which could add to the health of the financial health of the airlines. So those measures and those discussions are still in place, still taking place. We hope to hear some good news. The second aspect, which you rightly said, I think the aviation industry, airlines, through a multiplier effect, have a huge impact on the economy or hospitality in general. So whether it comes to hotels, whether it comes to the service industry, travel and aviation and airlines play a very vital role. And the number of jobs, I mean, there are multiple reports, even within India, internationally, yes, there is this whole element of impact, severe and significant impact, which is why we put up these requests. But on the job side or on the staffing side, I think at least I can speak for Vistara to say that our primary focus has been that we have minimal impact on the staff. First and foremost, there's no job losses. We try and maintain and retain as many jobs, I mean, all the jobs that we have. We did have to take some remuneration changes. So about 30% of us have had to take a shorter work week or a shorter work month, compulsory no pay leave, which translates into some, cost reduction as well. But 70% of our staff, which is the frontliners, people who are at the lowest income band, we managed to insulate them thus far.
All right. Okay. In addition to that, the government has put a cap in terms of the airfare. So is that also hurting the business in any way? And would like to get your thoughts on that.
So on certain sectors, yes, I suppose, as I mentioned, there are certain flights where the flights are full and we could, given independence and freedom, could be able to, match supply and demand, because that's the best way in which a market gets regulated, supply and demand working on its own. In a free market. But having said that, I know why the government has come up with a cap. I think there's a rationale to it as well. We don't want airlines to price below cost. We also don't want airlines to price too high, because there are customers who are affected in different parts of the country who might not be able to afford it. So I think it is what it is. Given a choice, I would have said that it's best if we operate on an independent basis. But now we know that there is a rationale behind why the ban has been put in, and those are the rules of the game. So we have to abide by that.
Okay. So, like you mentioned, the airline industry is under massive stress, and every day we hear about airlines going bankrupt. Mr. Kannan would like to know, when will we see the aviation industry bouncing back to normalcy, or what will it take for the aviation business to thrive?
The easiest and the simplest answer, which is also the toughest actually to get through, is the confidence. So as a traveler, as a passenger, I think once the passenger gains confidence to say, look, airline travel is still the safest form of travel between point A and B. The airlines are putting in a lot of efforts to mitigate the risk, and the airlines remain committed to making sure that there's minimal infection and spread. I think once that message gets through, and I think it is getting through, so that once that happens, I think the possibility of us being able to fill our flights increases immediately. And that is, in fact, the best way to make airlines more healthy. I mean, subsidies and short-term measures or some structural changes will definitely help. But ultimately, we need passengers and bums on those seats. So that's, I suppose, the single most important determinant. The second aspect I would say is related to that, the confidence not just in the airlines, but also in the various measures that will be taken at the destination point. So today, as you might know, different states have different policies in terms of quarantine, in terms of what happens when you arrive at an airport. Can you go home? You can stay home for 7 days, 14 days. Some of them say that you need to have a test. Now that's coming out as well in certain states. So depending on what mandates and guidelines which the states come up with, I think that will also have a big impact on the passengers' minds, because what you don't want, unless you're going back home to be reunited with your loved ones, in which case you will gladly accept some of these conditions. But otherwise, when it comes to leisure or business travel, you can imagine how tough it is when some of these measures are in place.
Well, honestly, as a traveler, I really miss going to airports and taking those flights. I'd like to understand, what kind of travelers are you seeing right now? Is it business travelers, leisure? I mean, I doubt if there would be any leisure travelers at this point of time, but is it mainly business travelers or people who are wanting to reunite with their families? What is the kind of trend that you've seen, and the busiest sector for Vistara at this point of time, and also what it was pre-COVID?
Right. In terms of the travel mix or the passengers who are traveling on us, I have to say significantly, it's people who are stuck in different parts of the country and are traveling back home. So like you said, visiting friends and relatives, there are people who say, I have to go and visit my elderly parents, or there are husbands who say, I've been away from my wife and my kids, so I have to go back to where I was, because the lockdown, if you remember, was announced quite suddenly. So there was not everyone who had a chance to move around. There's also a very heartwarming story of a father who came to pick up his two kids who were just born a few days or few weeks, sorry, few months in Delhi, and we managed to fly him on our flight to Kolkata. So this is a parent who was waiting to meet his kids, and he's flown them back home to Kolkata. So there are heartwarming stories right through. There's a lot of such cases, and we are glad as an airline to facilitate this. So that's the first part. There is some business traffic, leisure, I think not at the moment yet. As I said, it will depend on what the norms are in different states. What we've also seen is that there's a general increase in traffic to the eastern part of the country. So I suppose these are people who are working in the metros, the other metros, whether it's in Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, wherever it is. And now they are all going back home, because now after the 2-month lockdown, they have an opportunity to go back to their loved ones back home in their hometown. So we've seen a general increase in traffic flow towards the east, which is why I mentioned we had to upgrade some of our flights to a bigger aircraft from between Delhi and Kolkata. What we've also seen is that there's a change in the preferred timings. So before COVID, if you look at the most popular flights, not just for us, but for many airlines, and especially us, because we are more full service and business and corporate centered, a lot of people used to take the morning flight from Delhi to Mumbai and the evening flight from Mumbai to Delhi, because they had a one-day business or maximum stay over the next day and then fly the next evening. There's been a change because, yes, business traffic has reduced. A lot of the flights actually which are doing well are the middle of the day flights. Again, two reasons for this, because business travel has not picked up yet. We will wait to see what happens on the 8th of June after there's more normalcy. And secondly, also because people, there's restriction in movements in the night. So people want to get to their destination somewhere in the afternoon rather than traveling sometime after 7 p.m. So we'll see if that continues. And these are trends which we saw for the first week.
Okay. And what about international flights?
I'm hoping for the best, and I'm hoping to see when that resumes. From what we know for now, at least, I think the month of June has been ruled out. So the latest circular from the ministry says that we have to wait at least until the 1st of July. And the decision is still not taken, as I'm sure you're aware, and the news outlets have been carrying. So let's wait and see. Yes, there is a huge demand for that as well. I mean, there are customers and companies which are getting in touch with us for charter flights because there are people stuck in different parts of the country. So those are opportunities we're looking at, subject to all the relevant approvals from the ministry. But I believe that, I mean, to be fair, international travel will take some time. Because it's a function also of the other party. I mean, it's not a domestic issue anymore. It requires approvals, formalities from the other country in order for this to be initiated.
Vistara was going big pre-COVID in terms of its expansion plans, launching a lot of domestic as well as international sectors. What happens to all of that? Is that all on hold for now?
For now, unfortunately, the international ones will be on hold, but we are committed to this. In fact, I just have to repeat what we said earlier on this year, which is that we believe that India fundamentally is an important market. It's a big market with a lot of opportunity and potential. And our international plans are cognizant of this. So if you look at the long haul aircraft, the 787s that we have, the first one that we have, and we'll be getting 5 more, we believe that flying non-stop to different parts of the world, be it Europe or North Asia or other parts, will actually become a strong point for us, because people would not want to transit, people would not want to fly through multiple hubs, but rather would like to prefer to take a direct flight. So I think that would actually become a strength for us, and so we are still following up. When it happens will of course depend on the regulations from the various countries.
All right. And Curly Tales is followed by a lot of travel enthusiasts. Is there any message you would like to give to them? Because they are eagerly waiting to travel and waiting for things to get back to normal.
So I would like to, through you, I'd like to tell all the followers of Curly Tales, please get on a flight if that's what you want to do. I know that you have you have your own decisions to make, but I can safely and categorically state that Vistara will leave no stone unturned to make sure that your travel and your journey is safe, it's fun, and it's comfortable. Given the current times, the interaction from our crew might be limited, but we will make sure that the same warmth ensues when you board our aircraft.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kannan. That's really hopeful and a lot of positive comments coming in from you. Look forward to traveling really soon. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much, Kamya, and hope to welcome you on board soon.
Yes, thank you.